I recently did a performance of this song by Brett Crow, and it's a graphic score and has a lot of really interesting markings on it. And I've had a lot of questions of, is this what actual harp notation looks like? So I wanted to go through this a little bit because the extended techniques that I actually used in the piece most of them are actually real harp extended techniques, but they don't necessarily look like what's in the score. Some of them are similar, but I'm gonna go through them anyway because I think it's interesting just to learn what harp notation looks like and what the harp is actually capable of. So we're gonna go through my performance and talk about the extended techniques as they come up. Okay, so this first one, this is what I was using. It is just a screwdriver from IKEA. Any metal rod would have worked in this sense. This is what I generally use for this technique on the harp. It's actually called Fluidic glides or fluidic sounds. I just wanted to show you this book that I'm going to be using today to talk through a lot of these techniques. This is the name of the book. And this is just a glossary of pretty much like every special effect that you can think of on the harp. It has so many listed here. So it's not only describing the technique, but also how it's notated in the music. This is Fluidic Sounds. It says, press a steel rod or the side of a metal tuning key against the upper portion of a string shown by the dots. Use the left hand. With the right hand, play the string and rhythm indicated by the diamond notes. Place and move the left hand to produce the pitches shown. And what a fluidic sound looks like is this. Those were not exact notes, but you get the idea. It's really hard though to find the exact pitch. Sometimes what I have to do is I do a trick. I actually mark my pitches out on the string with a pencil. It comes right off and I just mark once I find the spot. Let's say if I wanted a C. There's the spot, so I'd mark that with the pencil. So if I needed that specific pitch for a piece, when I'm playing through, then I could make sure I land on it or go directly to that spot to get a C. And the other fluidic effect is just glides, like glissandos essentially on the string. It says, follow the same procedures as for fluidic sounds, except slide between the given notes without producing specific notes in between. Slide quickly. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so that technique is just a quick glissando with the back of my nails, and it creates a really percussive type of sound on the strings. The technique that I'm doing here is called a gushing chord or falling hail. Honestly, I've never really referred to it as this. It's just a glissando with the back of my nail. But it says to slide rapidly in the center of the strings with thumbnail if you're going up, or the second finger if you're going down. And it creates more of a percussive effect. The piece that I was doing here, I was doing multiple attacks of it to give a really cool percussive effect. Okay, this is not a real harp extended technique. I just thought of this. I was like, well, what kind of looks like this squiggly lines and what will produce a sound that would be also interesting to watch? So I was just grabbing all of my harp extended techniques. I have like a little bag of everything. And my exercise band was next to my bag. I'm like, oh, that could maybe work. So I pulled it out and gave it a try, and it worked. So I added it in. Composers, take note if you want to add this to your next piece. But yeah, the best way I discovered, and the way I did not do it in this recording, I kind of was at an angle and I found it was not accurate when I was hitting the string. Sometimes I would miss the best, and it's just a little awkward to play because I have to lean out like this to get both hands. I guess I could try with the left hand, but I'm right-handed, so it's just easier for me to do it like this. But if you're going directly to the strings and if the distance is short between the rubber band, ooh, so even that was a little bit tricky. and most of the sound you're hearing is the slapping of this. So I don't know if it's really the most effective extended technique, but it's interesting to watch. So this is more back of the nail, just improvising glissandos going up and down. And with this fluidic effect with the screwdriver, instead of going just down and up in one motion or hitting specific pitches, I'm doing kind of like a kind of ghost tremolo type of sound effect here. The other thing I want to say about this technique is in order for it to make a sound, you do have to continually pluck the string. There's only so much that you can do until the sound then dies away. So that's why I was plucking so often. The other warning I will give with this technique is if you do enough of it on one string, it does wear the string away. It ends up like chewing it up. So I personally try to not do this technique too much because it does wreck the string. Here in the score, I kind of did what the shape looked like, which to me is kind of like a quick scoop along the strings. So they ended up sounding like just quick, short glissandos. Okay, so right here, I did, again, more back of the nail, very short glissandos. Generally, this doesn't really work very well in the harp. The sound just cuts out so quickly right after that it doesn't really have a chance to ring fully, and it just sounds like it's stopped. I kind of made it work here, but it's not often seen. Okay, sorry to stop so often. So that slap of the harp is called a palm strike. And according to the book, it says to violently strike all the strings between the notes shown with the flat of the hand and release it immediately. And this technique, it sounds like it hurts, but it really doesn't. It's just quickly sliding the hand up the strings. And this is called a whistling sound. Slide rapidly over the strings with the flat of the hand in the direction of the arrow. So this can go up or down. I tend to go up for this effect just because I feel like I have more runway and my hand's not gonna like smack into the soundboard here. But that's kind of what that technique is. And depending on how slow or fast you go, the sound can change. And you want to try to not leave the string too much or you'll get a little bit of ringing. But maybe that could be part of the technique if you wanted to write that in. So there, I just did regular plucking of notes. The notes that are actually notated in this score, I just played as normal notes. This is just normal sheet music. And here I did more quick glissandos. If you're interested in hearing more of this nail glissando effect in classical music, you can look up the Ginastera or the Ginastera harp concerto. In the third movement, there is tons of quick movements of the glissandos. Also in the cadenza as well. It's really interesting to hear how he uses a combination of slow nail glissandos as well as the fast rhythmic ones. Okay, so the shapes, I interpreted them as glissandos, and honestly, all of those glissandos, maybe except the square, not even the square actually, no, I would never write in a performance. The reason is when we're playing glissandos on the harp, you always want to make sure you're strumming straight across the string. If you're going at an angle, you're going to be not leaving the string in the best way and the sound will be compromised. So when I was doing the triangle, I was kind of going up in an angle and not all the strings were played evenly, and same going down. The bottom of the triangle was fine. Circle, same idea. It's just a little bit awkward because I also have to change my finger halfway through. So this really is is not ideal, especially in this place right here. The square, I thought it was kind of interesting because I did this kind of gesture or whatever it was. I started up or down, I can't remember here. And then I went across. I think that one kind of works because it creates like an interesting, the scraping effect there. And then going across, this is often seen, even though it's technically overlapping notes, but it's often seen when we go like both directions with the hands like this. Okay, so the only thing I'm going to talk about here is the crescendos and decrescendos. Yes, you can control the volume of this depending on how hard you pluck. Okay, so let's talk through some of that. First off, the lines are pretty accurate for glissandos. They show, actually this book is really great for showing all the different ways glissandos can be written. So I'll show it on the screen here. Glissandos often are marked with the squiggly line, but often are also seen with just a straight line up. And then you'll see here, gliss ad lib. The character glissandi should be performed in the context of the piece performed. It's just saying like, do the glissando as you feel fit for the piece. It could mean like sweeping up like that, or it could be quick downward glissandos. And then again, we have the palm strike here. Often I've actually seen palm strike notated exactly like this actually, except over the pitches that I'm playing here, everything's in treble clefs. It just would not have made much of an effect if I did it right there. It's way more interesting if you hit the wire string. So that's why I kind of like threw my hand down there instead. But generally they are written like that as like a block of a chord like this. If you want them to last longer, they're written right here as half notes. So it's the same idea as when you're writing sheet music. If you want them quick, quarter notes. If you want them longer, you can write them as half notes or whole notes, etc. And then of course at the very end, we just have utter chaos. I interpreted that as just make sound. We want noise. So I just took the nails again and just went as fast as I could between the two nails to get that sound. Okay, so this is just a roll from paper towel and I covered it in like gold tissue just so it doesn't look crummy. But I've seen this used where you get to sing into the harp. I've also used this in a harp duet that I perform. Generally, if you're singing into the soundboard, it's just easier if you have a tube versus if you're like this. It's just awkward position, but this makes it a lot easier. And because of the resonance of the soundboard, the sound just like resonates so much. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely frequencies that ring a lot better than others. And the checkerboard, I actually just had no idea what to do for that. And I was like, actually, I think this would be really funny to film me playing checkers in the middle of this. And it happens twice in the piece. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good. Also, like if I'm being honest, it gave me a chance to have a break between recording this, just so I wouldn't have to do it all in one take. So I did the first half, I did 2 different takes of it, and then I did the second half, 2 different takes again, but it was nice to have that option. Okay, so for that line, it is actually pretty accurate for what's written. The sideway V's that you see above the notes, those are accents, just strings that are plucked with a little bit more force. The symbol that looks like half a circle with a dot, that's a fermata, which means play the note and just hold it for a little bit longer than its actual note value. And then we have just scribbles between the notes. I interpreted all the jaggedy scribbles as just like a quick rhythmic back of the nail glissando, and then I interpret the swoopy squiggles as kind of like a like attack the harp, just go crazy. And then lastly we have a singular dot above the notes, and I almost missed one of the notes in this take here, but what happens, those are called staccatos, and it's just playing the note and coming back on that string, ringing string immediately, so we dampen it and it creates kind of like a sharp attack. We don't generally see entire pieces that are all staccato. If you think about the ergonomics of the instrument, harpists work best when we can place our fingers and then play the strings. It becomes a little bit tricky when we have to come back to the string to dampen it, because we are limited in how fast we can go with that. Ways of getting around that by splitting up between two hands. Now I can go a little bit faster, but if you think about it, even just using 2-2-2-2, you get really limited of how fast you can move your hands. So these markings here, the two lines, I would actually interpret that as a pause, but I wanted to add sound to these, so I just interpret it as two short glissandos. Exactly as those are written, I thought those were pretty accurate. A swirly glissando going up and down, and then I just did a straight two-fingered glissando going up and down for the rainbow bit. Technically, I should have maybe done like 2 fingers in one hand and one, just to stay true to the 3 lines that are there. Again, this is all open to interpretation. I saw the circles and I was like, oh, it kind of looks like an ooh. I was like, oh, maybe I could like ooh while I'm playing, sing while I'm playing. And I actually think it's a kind of a cool effect to have the same pitch sung as you're playing. It really adds an interesting layer to the music when you have singing at the same time. I actually meant to do repeated notes over those because they're squigglies, not straight lines over the oohs. And I totally forgot in the recording, but it was still effective. I've already talked about the palm strike. I've already talked about the screwdriver effect. The squiggly lines over notes, I interpreted that as just quick, repeated note playing. This is not super ergonomic to playing on the harp. If harpists want the same note repeated, we would make an enharmonic note between 2 strings. So that means 2 strings sound exactly the same. So the first note's a C. So I would make the B a sharp. So we have 2 C's, and then what we would turn it into is a trill. So it just sounds way better than me doing, getting kind of like stuck on the strings a little bit. For this, I ended up doing exactly that, getting stuck on the string a little bit, just because there were more than one note that would require a pedal change, and I also didn't want to have to do a whack load of pedal changes in the middle of this. For example, right after the C and the B work, but then it's an A after that. And for an A natural, there's no enharmonic strings. I could have interpreted it like that. I could have been, I think it would have sounded kind of cool like that actually, but I wanted the harmonies to come through. Obviously the eye looking was a joke. The glissandos here are actually pretty accurate of how they would be written if this was harp music. I started on the middle here and then just worked my way outward. I think that's pretty effective, actually. Something that I did here also during that eye look part is I did muffle. It's called muffling on the harp, muffling, muting the strings. And because the nature of the harp, it just rings all the time. So instead of us worrying about making sure notes are ringing long enough, we have to worry about the opposite, making sure like, is the music clear enough that we can hear what's going on because there's all this strings ringing. So oftentimes while we're playing, we'll be muting the strings as we're going to make sure things are clean and clear. This is the same idea of the singing and playing at the same time. I think it's a really cool added effect. FYI, I discovered after I filmed all this, I was totally holding that kazoo backwards. Whoops. Anyways, it was still effective, and I feel like it just adds to the chaos of all of this. This line of music, I think, is one of my favorite parts in the whole thing. I just find the harmonies of these repeated notes just so beautiful, so pretty. Same idea, I've already talked about the repeated note aspect, but I was trying to also stay true to where they began and where they stopped, so that the A would start first, and then the F would come in, and then the C would come in, but then the A stopped, and then the F stopped, and then the C would be by itself. Right after, we have 3 squiggly lines going down. I just did a 3-finger glissando going down, or it was with this hand, I think. I don't think it was super noticeable because of the angle it was filmed at, but I was holding 3 fingers out for that. Oh my goodness, I just love those harmonies. They're so pretty. Oh, love it. I'll stop it here. That long V that you see there is a crescendo where we're supposed to get louder in the music. And then of course we have the checkers break. I actually played a full game of checkers by myself in order to get that shot because I wanted to be accurate. I didn't want to just like put random tiles over. I guess I could have. I don't know if anyone ever noticed, but I played a whole game and I wanted to make it seem like the game of checkers was nearing the end. At the end of this piece, I just thought it was really funny. And then here we have 3 more notes after the checkers here of these kind of like swoops that go over the notes. Generally, when we see that in harp music, there's slurs, kind of like we want the music to be phrased like so. In this sense, it's just going to the next note. So generally we see them over a few notes at a time to make it more lyrical sounding. So here I just interpret it as, let's lift the hand a bit more. So I just kind of like bounced a bit more. Does it change the sound? Not necessarily, but it does affect how I play it and interpret the music. If I was going to be playing something legato, which means smooth, it's going to be interpreted to me a little bit differently if I was to lift between those notes, where that would be more bouncy sounding. So notation like that is also important, but generally it's up to the interpretation of the player to get that same effect. So again, we have more screwdriver effect on the strings. I actually made a mistake. What I meant to do is I wanted to go back down again because it's the opposite, right? You're going down on the string, but the sound is getting higher. That's kind of how I played it, of how it's written, but how it sounds, I should have played it the opposite because it goes, the swoop goes up and then down to the last note, the F, and I should have done the opposite. I should have done going back to the F like that. That's this piece in a nutshell and all the extended techniques that I used for this. I love showcasing all these different techniques that are on the harp, especially for composers who are looking to write for the instrument. We are always looking for a new repertoire as harpists. Very exciting, and it's so much fun to play. Like, we play an instrument that we can pretty much make sound like nearly anything, and we can be like percussive with it, and it can sound raw, and it's different than the stereotypical harp sounds that you usually hear of angelic glissandos, although we can totally do those. To end this video, I just want to go through a couple other of my personal favorite extended techniques that are a little bit unique. So this is my all-time favorite, the Super Ball mallet. It's a bouncy ball with a chopstick in it. And there's different ways you can use this. If you rub it on the soundboard, it can make it sound like a whale, which is super fun. One of my favorite sounds. It just sounds so cool. And the other one is rubbing it on the strings. Again, this one's a little bit hard to figure out. You gotta really know the pacing of it. It takes a little bit of time for the harpist to learn like where the sweet spot is. And also the Super Ball mallet does matter. I have a couple others that just don't work. They just don't make the sound as good as this one right here. So it takes a little trial and error. It's so cool. And there's just like so many things you can do with this. You can also like hit it on the soundboard to create a drum with the harp. You can also like hit the strings. Really anything that you can think of, you can do with the harp. I have a tongue depressor here. I've used this before to do glissandos in the upper portion here. Now this is a really cool effect I learned from a harpist friend. These are just honey dippers, and you put them between the strings, and when you go to pluck the strings, again, they're a little finicky. Sometimes they just slide right off. If you put them between the strings, it's kind of fun how they slide down because it changes the pitch. And that's all I'm going to be talking about today for extended harp techniques. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on all of these. If you had a favorite one, or if there's something that really surprised you, let me know in the comments. And yeah, let me know if you also have any questions. I'd be happy to answer.